alternative experience.
The alternative experience.
The alternative experience.
Hey everybody, Nicky Joe Eddie Vane. Welcome to another episode of Alternative Experience. Now, this week I want to talk to you about something that is something that happens to me quite often. Now, I don't engage with sort of internet trolling or rucks, etc. But naturally, obviously, being in the industry I am, I put information out there and people comment back. And there's one thing that happens quite often that I really wanted to try and sort of clarify. And I've struggled to do it for a long time, but I think I've come up with a way of doing it. So I thought I'd do a podcast on it, basically. So I've been studying breath work for nearly a decade. I am a relative newcomer in yogic terms, but it has literally become my life. I suppose you could say that I quite literally live and breathe it. Now, during that time, I've held, I suppose, a conflicting view surrounding the Wim Hof Method. And my way of explaining it has often got me into a bit of misunderstanding. But in recent times, I think that I have been able to far better dissect it and kind of make sense of it and hopefully in turn explain what I mean to people. So that's what I'm going to do in today's podcast. I really do hope to sort of clarify both my personal and my professional position on the Wim Hof Method because it has taken the world by storm. And I suppose to some people I have a controversial sort of opinion on it. But when I first trained to become a facilitator, I was taught specifically nervous system mastery, nervous system management, tools for general day-to-day life. Now, these are all safe, simple, highly effective techniques that work based on the intrinsic link between your nervous system, the way that you feel, and the way that you're breathing. So the conflict for me comes from the fact that the majority of the world is suffering from an overactive fight or flight nervous system. Okay. And to combat that, you really do need to focus on slow balancing techniques, such as a simple 4-4 breathing technique or a 4-8 relaxation technique. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to redress the imbalance in the nervous system. And the last thing you want to be doing is actually focusing on the fight or flight, which is actually the problem in the first place. Now, just to put it into perspective, in my course, all of the excitatory exercises, such as breath of fire, bellows breathing, I call these coffee breathing techniques because they wake you up, they really do rev you up, but they need to be used extremely sparingly. And I'm very clear about that all the way through my course, all the way through my content, because I don't want people really focusing on these breathing techniques because that's what they know, because of things like the Wim Hof Method, and then actually making their situations worse. Because what that actually does, if you're going to sort of really, really practice those, that's just going to feed into that nervous system balance. It's going to fortify it, and the issue is going to get worse and worse for the person that is obviously trying to deal with this imbalance in the first place. So does that mean that the Wim Hof Method is crap? Is Wim Hof a charlatan? Is he taking everyone for a ride, or is he just a bit misunderstood? Well, before I alienate any of his diehard fans, no, he's not a charlatan. He is the real deal. He's an absolute legend, and what he's done for breathwork cannot be underestimated. However, I do think something enormous has been lost in translation when it comes to his methods. Now, his methods are traditionally a representation of breathwork. Yes, it is a form of breathing technique, and an extremely powerful one at that. But it's a little bit more than that. The Wim Hof Method is based on both the release of trauma and blockages. So it could be mental or sort of creative blockages. It could be repressed trauma. And also building both mental and physical resilience, because that is something that, as our lives have got more cushy, we've kind of really, really sort of lost focus on. And it's something that does need a lot of attention. However, his breathing technique on its own is a stressful experience by its own nature. Yeah, as I say, it's a really, really extremely excitable exercise. Now, when you do breath of fire, for example, you're only going to do sort of 3 rounds of 20, which is maybe 5 minutes worth of practicing. With these sort of trauma release techniques, they're an hour of breathing, 2 hours of breathing. They're really, really super, super excitable for that nervous system. And as I say, they do have a great possibility of making things like anxiety, digestive issues, insomnia, immune imbalance, even like endocrine imbalance worse if they're not understood and in the right hands. Now, at this stage, I'm sure there's some of you out there that have done the Wim Hof Method, swear by it. I'm sure there's some people out there that just think, well, obviously he can't be as big as he is if he doesn't know what he's doing. That's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying at all. So again, I'm hoping to sort of really clarify that. But what I'm trying to say to people is, first point, I also actually run trauma release sessions. So it's something that I do, okay? These are resilience classes, and they are for those that are suffering from maybe events of the past, like I said, that trauma. But I'm very clear and careful about how I explain this to my clients. I do explain this isn't a daily method. This is something you'd use once a month, once a quarter, hopefully once a year, and hopefully eventually never. Because like I say, they are really very specific in what they're trying to achieve. Now, think about it. I'll put it to you this way. If you have been the So let me take it back. There's one thing that I haven't mentioned there. Not only should they be practiced as sparingly as possible, but depending on the level of trauma or the level of blockage or the level of frustration, the level of emotional issues that you have, they really should be practiced with a guided professional, or at the very least in the presence of a highly supportive loved one. Now, like I say, think about it. If you've been the victim of some kind of deep abuse and you've managed to kind of bury it deep in the pit of your stomach, and then you go and release this at the end of an hour-long breathing session, you're going to need some support to deal with that. It is an incredible experience. I don't want to sort of undersell it, and I don't want people to be scared of these breathing practices, but they do need to be taken seriously. They're an incredible experience, but they are one that I feel need to be guided. They need to be supported, and you need education from your facilitator before you engage in them. And I do think this is something that, I follow Wim Hof with a fine-tooth comb. I love the guy, but he very rarely kind of explains this to people. And as I say, because he is naturally one of the big people, if someone hears about breath work, or try breath work, they're naturally going to go to his method. And like I say, 9 times out of 10, they're going to make things worse. And this is something I see myself. This isn't just something that I'm just mentioning, okay? Some people out there might be thinking, you're just jealous. These are the words of envy. Definitely not. I am a supporter, and I really do celebrate when people make it big in this world. I think that's something that you should do, because otherwise you're going to be the one that feels the consequences of being any other way. Okay. But the only reason this is even on my radar, just to explain, is in my own breathwork practice, no fewer than 50% turn up to their discovery call, which is the initial consultation. And when they hear breathwork, they say, it doesn't work for me. Tried the Wim Hof Method, did it for a week, did it for a month, did it for a year, and it just made my insomnia worse. It just made my digestion worse. It made my anxiety worse. Some people will say, oh, the first session was amazing, but after that I just got worse and worse, and now I'm on your doorstep. Now, not only does that kind of immediately create a bit of an uphill struggle for me to get them on board and kind of convince them that breath work can help them or will help them, but it's no doubt creating a lot of kind of suspicion and confusion in the wider public. Now, obviously, due to the notoriety that Wim Hof has kind of built and that automatic status that it comes with, I just personally feel he should be a little bit more thorough in explaining what his methods are all about. Not only his methods, but also the alternative methods that the majority of people actually need and would benefit from. Like I say, they should be done in unison, but I just think that people should really realise that Wim Hof, personal opinion, is not a day-to-day thing. It's not a day-to-day nervous system management thing. Unless you really understand it. As I say, take your time to really deep dive your nervous system, understand your nervous system. And if you really do feel that that is what you need every day, then great. Again, have the understanding of what you're doing to your nervous system. But I think what happens, like I say, people get told about breath work. Breath work is a big buzzword these days, as are things like CBD and all these other sort of boom markets. It's legitimate, but as I say, it's not just as simple as doing a breathing pattern and hoping for the best. It really does need to be targeted and tailored to exactly what it is that you're going through, exactly what you're trying to achieve and recover from. But like I say, education is absolutely key. So really, to surmise what I'm trying to say, the Wim Hof Method is extremely effective at two things: releasing trapped trauma and or sort of emotional or kind of creative blockages, and of course building that mental and physical resilience. However, they're not a real thorough representation of breathwork as most people seem to assume they are. Now, the majority of people that are suffering, that turn to breathwork, okay, they don't know where to turn. They go to this internet and they see Wim Hof. He's got the most followers. They assume naturally that's it. But they need nervous system management tools. And these breathing techniques are extremely, extremely different. So I hope that really clarifies my position on the Wim Hof Method. I'm not a hater. I love the guy. I think what he's done with regards to actually raising awareness for breathwork cannot be understated. But like I say, this isn't something that I've seen a little bit of his material and I'm coming to a conclusion. I've been following the guy meticulously since he popped onto the scene. He was part of my journey too. And I just feel that because he is so focused on the fact that, I mean, we know his story. His story is about trauma. He suffered one of the worst traumas I can ever imagine a man going through. There's only one that is worse than losing, obviously, the person that you've signed up to spend the rest of your life with. There's only one that's worse, and that's obviously a child. So what he went through is purely something that I don't wish upon anybody. And the fact that he was able to get on top of that with breathwork just shows you how amazing this modality is. But I think that no fault of his own. Maybe he's just overlooked it because this is his method. But I think that because he is so big on the scene, it would be nice if he did just kind of spend a little bit more time just saying that these are amazing breathing practices, but these should be kind of a maintenance breathing technique. You know, you shouldn't be doing these every day. You should be doing a one-off session once a month, once a quarter, once every 6 months, once a year, and eventually the goal would be not at all. But they should be used sparingly. They should be understood. And as I say, this isn't the way to do it if you're suffering with general day-to-day issues like brain fog, energy imbalance, anxiety, digestive problems, immune problems, hormonal problems. All of this kind of stuff really does need to be done on what we call the pranayama sort of basis, which is breathing techniques which are specifically tied to your biology, tied to your nervous system, and they are specific to achieve. So if you've got low energy, you know, you do an excitatory technique to bring that energy up, and then balancing throughout the day, and then you'd have a nice bedtime technique to make sure you fall asleep and stay asleep. If you're somebody that's the other way around, if you're frantic, anxious, agitated, all these sort of negative, hyperactive scenarios, then you're going to need to work on the other side. You're going to need to bring it down, calm it down, bring balance into your life. And as I say, if you have trauma, if you have something that's feeding into that anxiety, feeding into that problem that you've not dealt with, that's where the Wim Hof Method comes in, and it's highly effective. However, as I say, I also run those myself. I'm not Wim Hof. It's not his method. It's very similar. It is what we call connected breath work. It's connected breathing. And if anybody's interested in hearing more, then obviously let me know. But that's not the reason for today's podcast. I'm not here to sell to you. But if you do want any information, if you're thinking about using breath work and you want to know where to start, if you tried breath work and it didn't work for you, you tried the Wim Hof Method and this sort of kind of resonates with yourself, get in touch. But yeah, I just hope that clarifies my position, because I don't want people to think I'm a hater. I certainly am not. I celebrate the man and I give him kudos wherever I can. I just think that there needs to be a bit of clarity on his message. Hope you enjoyed that, guys. Until the next time, see you soon.